American freedom. Let's talk about this because I don't know if you were born prior to, I don't know, 1988, you probably didn't see the entire generation of people you grew up with, or even yourself, if it's the case as it is in mine, go over to a foreign war for a regime change and weapons of mass destruction. And when we say this is Iraq 2.0, like I don't know that. I'm no foreign policy expert, so I'm not going to pretend to be. But there is some interesting parallels. I don't find myself agreeing with the Daily Wire all that often, but I wanted to react to Matt Walsh's take on Iraq here because I thought it was pretty interesting. And let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. All right, there we go.
Regime change. Here's what Hegseth
What is it?
said.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it.
Now, a lot of people on the internet are saying that this is the Iraq War 2.0. The administration and war hawks are saying that it isn't. So it's important to lay out some historical context for those of you who don't remember what happened in 2003 or weren't born yet or were too young. Now, back then, the Bush administration would often use the Sunday shows to make the case for regime change in Iraq. They would fabricate information on occasions, as it turned out, but they were also grilled over and over again. They knew that Meet the Press was not friendly territory for them. They knew that the Sunday shows were biased in favor of the left, but the Bush administration still felt compelled to make their case before a hostile and skeptical audience, one way or another. Just days before the invasion, Vice President Dick Cheney went on one of the Sunday shows and said, "I think the invasion will go relatively quickly, weeks rather than months." A few weeks later, after the situation spiraled out of control, the Washington Post reported that Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul D. Wolfowitz told reporters that defense officials made assumptions that turned out to underestimate the problem, beginning with the belief that removing Saddam Hussein from power would also remove the threat posed by his Ba'ath Party. In addition, they erred in assuming that significant numbers of Iraqi army units and large numbers of Iraqi police would quickly join the U.S. military and its civilian partners in rebuilding Iraq. Now, back in the present day, yesterday, the Washington Post reported that, quote, inside the Pentagon and among some members of the Trump administration, there was deepening concern Sunday that the Iran conflict could spiral out of control. Iran and Iraq are two different countries.
There's the parallel a little bit. Yeah. None of that happened. Anyway, here, I got to watch some more here.
That's true. And a lot of things about those two situations are different, but they aren't as different as the proponents of this war would have you believe. It definitely is not unreasonable to wonder if and to worry that the early days of this conflict and the stated reason for it resemble very closely those events in 2003. So the reasoning we're hearing so far simply is not good enough. I acknowledge that the White House has access.
The one thing the Daily Wire will not go over, Matt Walsh does work for the Daily Wire. Daily Wire is obviously Ben Shapiro's network, is they won't talk about it was Bibi Netanyahu in 2002 in front of Congress that did all this. It was largely Israeli intelligence, and Israel has been trying to get us involved in a war in Iran for, I don't know, the last 40 years.
Just all kinds of information that I don't have. They could have reasons for doing what they're doing that I don't know about or understand. But that's an argument we've heard before, not just during Iraq. I mean, much more recently. It's what we heard during COVID, when all the people with more information than us chose a course of action that was disastrous for the country, and we still haven't recovered. The trust the experts logic died with COVID, and it's never coming back. From now on and forevermore, the experts will need to make their case clearly and coherently, explain exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, and what the end game is, and what information.
Bingo. That I will 100% agree with. Like, there's no trust the experts anymore. I mean, that's solid, 100% on point.
Justifies whatever course of action they've chosen. Just simply trusting that they have it all under control is not going to work anymore. At least for those of us with a memory that stretches back farther than last week. To the extent that an objective has been clearly laid out, stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons appears to be the primary one. But the problem is that we were told that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated. That's the White House's own phrasing. Still on the website, you can go check it. Just a few months ago. It was.
Yeah, that's it's going to be a hard one to overcome there.
Obliterated. So how could Iran's nuclear program go from total obliteration, annihilation, to a matter so urgent that we have to go to war over it in the span of like 7 or 8 months?
That was just back in June, mind you.
That's a problem. That doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
No.
This is a question that still has not been even close to coherently answered. It is a fundamental hole in the logic behind this entire thing. Now, the question about the end game, on the other hand, it is very important. This, at this point, is by far the most important question. Whatever the reason is.
Yeah. What is the end game here? What does the end game look like? Is it a regime change? A regime change doesn't happen by a couple of bombings. You're going to need boots on the ground for a regime change. That takes time. Like, you're not just going to bomb them and then the people there form their own like totally cool government. So we're going to need clarity on that.
So we got into this thing, and that's still not clear. We are hearing different things. What exactly is the end game? How do we get out? When do we get out? What are we trying to achieve? The Iranian people rise up and take control of their government is what we've heard. That's what Trump said in his address on Saturday night. That's what he called for. Well, okay, what does that mean? Which people? How are they taking control? What happens after they do take control? Are we sure the new people, whoever they are, will be better than the old people? How are we going to make sure of that? How are we going to make sure of that while also not putting boots on the ground? Or are we going to put boots on the ground? Even though we were told many times that would not happen. None of this has been explained, and it needs to be. You know, it's just a basic matter of life that, generally speaking, the most ruthless and violent forces will be the ones who seize the crown. That's the way, that's the lesson of history, not just Iraq, but all of human history. What exactly is the mechanism by which we plan to ensure that these secular pro-Western factions in Iran, who are by definition not barbaric killers, somehow manage to fill the power vacuum and prevail over the factions that are barbaric killers? Now, I'm not a foreign policy expert. I admit that. I'm just a common sense guy. I'm also a student of history. So someone explain it to me, to all of us. If you blow up the government, how is it not very likely that militant killers who are as bad or worse than the old regime fill the void? How is that not just a possible scenario, but actually the most likely scenario? Now, however much trust you may have in Donald Trump and his administration, this is the reality he must contend with. It's perfectly reasonable for Americans to be skeptical.
Yeah, typically third world dictatorial Islamic countries don't just have a sect of reasonable people ready to take over the government after you bomb and, turn their country into a bombed out, even more third world shithole. So we're going to need clarity on that. But, like I said, I don't find myself agreeing all of the time with the Daily Wire or anything like that. Matt Walsh is probably the most reasonable person at the Daily Wire. And I think he had some pretty good points there. I won't watch any more and make this a hugely long video or anything like that. But I think it's important to point out that although, sure, it is different a little bit than Iraq in 2003, but the parallel is something that you can't ignore just because of the similarity. We're getting Israeli intelligence that they have nuclear weapons, which they've been telling us for 40 something odd years. They've been trying to pull us into a war with Iran for as long as I've been alive, at least. The intelligence in 2002 about the WMDs that we conveniently never found came from Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. And if we're going to bomb Iran and have a boots on the ground war, are Republicans not giving Democrats an actual platform to run on in the midterms and moving forward into the next presidential election in 2028, which they really don't have a platform to run on now? Is it giving them a platform to run on with another seemingly decades-long boots on the ground war in the Middle East that I don't think any reasonable person wants? Is it giving them a platform? And essentially, are we going to give away power to Democrats? And if this is about Iranian freedom as they claim it is, which most reasonable people know it's not, are we going to trade our own freedoms for the perceived freedom of Iranians? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. And of course, as always, this is Cancel Again Podcast, official YouTube channel. If you like this kind of content, please hit the like and subscribe button down there and share this video, because help get the word out and help the channel. I'm just another guy.